If you think college football coaches are nervous at the end of a big game, you ought to see them on National Signing Day. Welcome into the Sporting News Studios, and here to talk with me about National Signing Day, our college football recruiting expert, Brian McLaughlin. I'm Tom Vandervoort. And Brian, who are some of the biggest names out there that we expect to see commit on National Signing Day, which is Wednesday, and where do you think they might go?
Well, out of our national top 125, we actually have 4 of our top 10 players still out there, which is kind of rare based on the 5 years I've been at Sporting News. The biggest one is Robert Kimdichie, who his brother Denzel plays at Ole Miss, so it's pretty much a done deal that he'll go to Ole Miss, although LSU's in the mix and a couple other schools. He's one. You've got Laramie Tunsil, who's an offensive lineman out of Florida. Kind of looks like either a Georgia kid or maybe another Ole Miss kid, which is kind of a late push for Laramie. And then there's Eddie Vanderdoes, the former USC commit, who is kind of bouncing between USC, UCLA, Alabama, Notre Dame. Who knows? I think he's kind of enjoying the drama, to be honest with you. And then the last one out of our top 10 who's picking tomorrow is Montravius Adams, who could end up at Clemson, Georgia, whatever. So I think what you're seeing here is a pattern. Is a lot of the Southeastern Conference schools are still very much up in the air, and that's kind of how it is every year. Well,
that brings me to my next question, which is which school might have the most to gain on National Signing Day? Here you mentioned Ole Miss with potentially a couple big-name recruits. Are there other schools like that out there that potentially could take a big step forward?
Yeah, there's a couple. Ole Miss is, I think, the one that's really going to surprise everybody. They've kind of come out of nowhere over the last month or two. They've got the chance to get Kimdichie, Tunsil, Tony Connor, who's another one of my top 125 kids. He's number 32 on our list. So Ole Miss probably stands to gain the most. However, Alabama, big shock. I feel like I say that every year. Alabama's got a chance to get a couple kids that would just basically lengthen, their lead over everybody else. So Alabama's one. As far as getting out of the Southeast, I kind of like UCLA's chances to land a couple kids, they're basically picking up some of USC's former recruits. So there's a couple schools right there that have a chance to do well. Georgia's another one, and that tends to kind of be the way it is in the South. They kind of cut each other up, the way they do on the field in the fall.
You speak about cutting each other up. I mean, I guess from what I understand, you don't really physically sign on the dotted line until this day. So we know a lot of kids have basically committed verbally to these schools. Are there times when players flip and go to some other schools, renege on their commitments essentially, and who might some of those guys be this year?
Yeah, it happens all the time. And the month of January in general, a lot of the shakeups happen, and I think you've got coaching changes happening. You've got kids getting cold feet and going, do I really want to go 2,000 miles away from home? That sort of stuff. So we've had a lot of flips all the way down to National Signing Day, which, again, is Wednesday. If you think that coaches stop recruiting a kid just because he's quote-unquote committed to another school, you're crazy, because the coaches keep going after kids who are committed to other schools, and that's their job. And like you said, until you sign that letter of intent, it's all just talk, really. We make a big deal out of it, but it's all just talk. It doesn't mean anything to be verbally committed to a school.
You could certainly see those coaches waiting by the fax machine and hoping these things come in. Quarterbacks commit early, I guess, and so we don't have a lot of quarterback news generally on National Signing Day. But what impact does a quarterback have on what happens on National Signing Day? Say a guy like Max Brown at USC, who I believe you had number 1 in our 125. But what kind of impact does a guy like that have, or some other quarterbacks that have already decided where they're going to go to school?
Well, quarterbacks pick early because the coaching staff wants them to be the lead recruiter of the class. So what you see a lot of times is even the spring of a quarterback's junior year is very busy for the top-notch quarterbacks to pick schools all the way into their summer. And so the recruiting that they do actually starts almost 9 to 12 months ago. And yes, they very much do work on other recruits that their coaching staff want them to go after. They call them, they text them, they Facebook them, they tweet, whatever it takes. When they're on campus with these guys, they work on them during official visits. So the quarterbacks have very much become the lead recruiter of the class.
Absolutely. All right, man, listen, that's great stuff, and we'll get you back on the phone tomorrow when it's all said and done, or almost all said and done, and we'll find out what happened and who won and who lost.